So how do these supratentorial and infratentorial tumors vary in their presentation? Is there any difference in the presentation of supratentorial and infratentorial tumors? And the answer is yes. We discussed earlier that the location is an important factor on the basis of which the clinical presentation depends. If I talk about supratentorial tumors first, they'll present with the routine features we have discussed: progressive focal neurological deficit, headache, seizures. Along with that, there can be mental status changes like depression, apathy, lethargy, confusion. There may be symptoms and signs of transient ischemic attack, which I can say tumor transient ischemic attack, maybe due to blockage of the blood vessels by the tumor cells. So, headache can be there, seizures can be there, neurological deficit can be there, mental changes can be there. But what is important to understand and remember is that supratentorial tumors usually will not lead to symptoms due to blockage of CSF drainage. So the symptoms due to blockage of CSF drainage due to hydrocephalus are much less common in supratentorial tumors. While if I compare this with infratentorial tumors, seizures are rare. So infratentorial tumors, the seizures are rare. Why? Because seizures are mainly because of irritation of the cortex in the area where tumor is. That's why they're very common in supratentorial tumors, but they are rare in infratentorial tumors. In infratentorial tumors, symptoms because of raised ICP due to hydrocephalus are very common, which was uncommon in supratentorial tumors. So what can be these symptoms? Again, it can be headache, there can be nausea and vomiting. Nausea and vomiting can be due to multiple reasons in these infratentorial tumors. They can be because of increased ICP from hydrocephalus. It may be because of direct pressure on the vagal nucleus. It may be because of direct pressure on the area posterima, which is also called as the vomiting center. Area posterima, that is the vomiting center. There can be papilledema, there can be gait disturbances, vertigo, ataxia, or diplopia can also occur because of the sixth cranial nerve palsy due to increased intracranial pressure. Sixth cranial nerve palsy because of increased ICP. And then there can be signs and symptoms indicative of mass effect in different locations of the posterior fossa. So that is as far as the clinical presentation of the intracranial tumors, the general basis, the general principles, or I can say the general clinical features which all tumors can present with. Variation will be there definitely depending on the location and the rate of growth, which we have discussed. Now, how will you investigate? The initial investigation can be a CT scan. Investigation by CT scan, where CT provides a rapid means of evaluating the changes in brain density, any acute hemorrhages less than 48 hours old, any change in the skull. But if you are asked the imaging modality of choice for diagnosis, for pre-treatment planning, for pre-surgical planning, for post-surgery monitoring or post-therapeutic monitoring of these brain tumors, the investigation of choice is MRI, especially with gadolinium enhancement. So MRI with gadolinium enhancement, that is the investigation of choice. Okay. Apart from these tumors of the CNS, these brain tumors, they have some very important immunohistochemical markers. And important questions can be asked related to immunohistochemical markers. So let's see what are the important immunohistochemical markers and what all we need to know about them. So one very, very important immunohistochemical marker is GFAP, that is a glial fibrillary acidic protein. Glial fibrillary acidic protein. Now, this stains intermediate filaments classically identified in astrocytes or the astrocytic tumors. That means, first thing to carry your message is astrocytomas, they stain positive for GFAP. Along with that, oligodendrogliomas and ependymomas also stain positive for GFAP. So I can say almost all gliomas are staining positive for this glial fibrillary acidic protein. So almost all gliomas, they're staining positive. That's an important thing, keep in mind that. But another important thing is, this is rarely found outside CNS. So the metastatic tumors, now another important cardiomedicine, metastatic tumors usually will not stain positive. Usually they will not stain positive for this GFAP. Okay. Then the next important IHC marker, the second one is first was GFAP. The second one is S100 protein, a calcium binding protein, which can stain positive in a lot of these CNS tumors. They can stain positive in gliomas. So gliomas, if I can say, they stain positive for GFAP and they also stain positive for S100. Keep that in mind, important. Ependymomas, chordomas, very importantly, S100 is very, very important for diagnosis of metastatic melanomas, and very important for diagnosis of schwannomas and neurofibromas. So these are two right, very important tumors for which we use, S100 in neuropathology. Okay. The primary aim of S100 in neuropathology is for diagnosis of metastatic melanoma, neurofibroma, and scleroma. Apart from that, they can be positive in gliomas, ependymomas, they can be positive in cardomas as well. Then, the third marker is very important again, cytokeratin, both high and low molecular weight cytokeratins. The major role of cytokeratin is to distinguish metastatic tumors, from primary CNS tumors, from the primary CNS tumors. And how do we distinguish? The metastatic tumors are going to stain positive. The metastatic tumors are going to stain positive for cytokeratins, while the primary CNS tumors are not going to stain positive. Then the fourth IHC marker is EMA, that is epithelial membrane antigen. Epithelial membrane antigen. It stains cell membrane in many carcinomas. Again, major role is to distinguish hemangioblastoma from metastatic RCC. Hemangioblastoma is going to stain negative for EMA, while metastatic RCC is going to stain positive for EMA. And very important apart from this, meningiomas. Meningiomas, a very important tumor, a very important intracranial tumor, they positively stain for EMA. And the last marker is definitely, you all know Ki67. We say it's a marker of cellular proliferation. So more the Ki67 index, poor the prognosis, more the proliferative tumor is, more the rapidly growing tumor is. So these are some important, histochemical markers which you should know. Then let's see the general principles of treatment. The mainstay of treatment for these tumors is surgery. And the surgery is gross total excision. Gross total resection, as we say, is the principle. Better word I'll use is a gross total resection. And depending on the grade of tumor, this surgery may or may not be followed by chemotherapy, and may or may not be followed by radiotherapy. So you may give one, you may give both. So may or may not follow chemotherapy, or may not be followed by radiotherapy. Now, when we are doing a surgery, I'm saying gross total resection. How does the surgery help our patient? What is the advantage? One is definitely it is decreasing the tumor bulk. By doing the resection, we are decreasing the tumor bulk. And second is it gives us a histological diagnosis. These are the two main, we say, aims of surgery or advantages of surgery when we are doing for these tumors. So that is as far as a broad overview, a general overview or general principles of these, intracranial tumors is concerned.